Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello and thanks for downloading Beyond the Balls. You're listening to our 6th episode. Beyond the Balls is a co-production between Women's Sport Australia and Wisp Sports. We are your hosts, Ella Smith and Georgina Mallon, here to discuss all the topics on women's sport off the pitch. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm good. It's cold this morning, but other than that, all good.
It is
How are
so
you?
cold. It is very cold. It is probably like 16 degrees, but that is absolutely freezing.
Way too cold.
Kind of
for
feels
here.
like -5 degrees, but that's okay. It's winter.
Today we're welcoming Madison de Rozario to the show. A 3-time Paralympian, Madison first started wheelchair racing when she was just 12 years old and competed at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, only 2 years later, aged 14. She's won 3 Paralympic medals, placed first in the 5,000 metres at the 2017 London World Para-Athletic Championships, was the first Australian to win the women's wheelchair title at the 2018 London Marathon, and was the 2019 women's 800 metre world champion. She's also won the Ausday 10K wheelchair race 6 times and has set 2 world records. In between those achievements and many more I probably didn't squeeze in, she studied a bachelor's degree and become a mentor for wheelchair athletes. In 2018, Madison was awarded Cosmopolitan's Sportswoman of the Year and Athletics Australia Female Para-Athlete of the Year. And this year, in very exciting news, she became Barbie's 2020 Shero and had a Barbie doll modelled off her. Madison, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
That was probably the longest introduction I've ever done. How are you going in isolation? Paralympics have been moved to 2021. How's that for you?
Yeah, I think it's such strange times for everybody right now. And I mean, I think for us, when the postponement was announced as opposed to a cancellation, it was just a little bit of a relief. I mean, none of us had access to perfect training kind of in that little lead up, and I think it would have been so strange kind of getting to a Paralympics. It's one of those events that's meant to bring the world together, and it just wouldn't have it wouldn't have been the right time. So yeah, now we have an extra 12 months and we've kind of just, I guess, sunk back into a base work of training, which is kind of unusual for this time of year. But yeah, it's been okay. It's been strange, and I'm so unbelievably bored of my apartment, but I'm just glad we're all doing our bit.
That's awesome. So you got getting into wheelchair racing. You got into wheelchair racing after your wheelchair basketball coach took you aside and told you that you were terrible at it. So tell us about starting out in wheelchair racing, and yeah, how you got into it and everything.
Yeah, I wish that story was any kind of an exaggeration, but it's not. I'm terribly uncoordinated. Ball skills are not my thing. And yeah, I was trying out basketball. I was about 11 or 12, and yeah, the coach, a man named Frank Ponta, pulled me to the side, and he just said, "You're not really an asset to this team at all." But he had a track chair in the storage room, so I tried it out in the parking lot, and I was not a natural at it. I wish I could say I was, but it took me, I think, a year and a bit to really get the hang of it and find a rhythm. And I grew up in Perth, so we would train along the Swan River. My mum would come out with me on the bike, and one of the things that kind of, I think, really kept me going is I was a very, very stubborn kid. And, I think like a couple months in, I was stopping every 2 seconds. The race chair is so uncomfortable. The position is not a comfortable one. And my mom basically was like, if you want to stop, we'll find another sport. Like we'll find something else. And like, whatever stubborn 12-year-old brain I had was like, absolutely not. Now that you said that, we're going to keep doing this. You're going to be out here with me every day on the bike until we get good at this. And we did. And then, yeah, finally fell into the rhythm of the sport and loved it.
That's amazing. So your first Paralympics was in 2008 at Beijing when you were only 14, which is incredible. So it was the first world stage event you competed on, and it must have been such an incredible experience. You said it was an insane feeling of being part of something bigger, part of a team, part of an entire movement. Can you explain how significant this moment was for you?
It was enormous, and it's one of those, I think there's small moments in life that you kind of keep chasing, that I think you get to experience things and feel things, and it kind of drives you to kind of keep doing and moving, and that's definitely one of those things. I think, athletics is such an individual sport, and I think, as people, we're so focused on our own goals and our own journey and all those kinds of things, and you get to a Paralympic Games, and suddenly you're in the green and gold with 400 other people, and it kind of just changes all of it. You just do become a part of something bigger, and you're all, there to compete. You all have the exact same mindset, and you're all just, kind of the same, I guess, person over that one thing, and you really do become just this one very small part of something bigger, and it is a very cool feeling.
I read an article you wrote in Mamma Mia for International Women's Day this year, and you said this quote: "A majority of the people I know with a disability who have had professional or sporting success can pinpoint the moment they saw something in them that they didn't see themselves. That moment is always described as one that changed their own view of themselves." Was this a moment for you?
Yeah, it was. So that moment for me did happen in Beijing, and I've been so lucky to have many of those moments. I've got incredible people in my life, but the one that really, really stands out was in Beijing. I was 14, and there's this Canadian athlete, her name's Chantal Petitclerc, and in Beijing, she retired right after on 5 gold medals and 3 world records. She was unbelievable. We were both in the 100-meter final. She won it. I lost it. We bookended it. Like, she was just this, powerhouse of a woman. And, she was kind of what I saw. And I was like, that's what I want to be. Everything she is, what I want to be. And in Beijing, after all the team tents are set up along the warm-up track. And so she had just gone to her, like, I don't know, 4th medal presentation. And she was walking back to the Canadian tent, and you had to pass by the Australian tent to do that. And she walked by, she had her gold medal, she had her flowers, from the ceremony. And she walks by the Australian tent and sees me, and she doubles back and she gives me her flowers. And she just said, "These are for you until you win your own." And just to have someone who was everything that I was trying to be, I think in that moment, see that in me when I, didn't quite see it. And that, moments like that are so rare. And I've now been in the sport for a little bit longer, and you don't see that very often. We didn't know each other that well. We were, racing against each other from different countries, and she took the time to do that and tell me that she saw something in me. And I think, yeah, that was definitely the moment for me.
Yeah, cool. So, when you started to obtain upper body strength and become quicker whilst you were training, did that have an influence on your body image and confidence? And yeah, constantly training, that must have had like a massive influence on how you perceived yourself. And I think like, yeah, especially going from the journey, like starting at 14 and then growing up like in the athlete domain. So yeah, did that have an influence on your body image and confidence?
It did. I mean, I think body image is such a tricky subject for all of us, boys, girls, men and women, everyone. And I think for young girls, it definitely is particularly difficult. And you throw in disability on top of that, and it just complicates it, even further. So I definitely didn't have a good relationship with my body, before I found sport. And it's not so much how it physically changed my body. I think it was suddenly this whole new respect that I had for it, for everything that my body could do. And even if it didn't look how society demanded it for it to be, beautiful or accepted or any of those things, it was still able to do incredible things. Like, it was, this body that was taking me to Paralympics, to world records, to, everything that I've achieved. And so I think that helped me develop so much respect for it. I think as an athlete, you have to have such a positive relationship with your body, because you're going to push it to the most impossibly extreme points and then like demand it to back it up again the next day. And so you have to have this positive relationship with it. And so, yeah, sport definitely helped me develop that.
Madison, you've been in shoots for a few big time magazines. You've been in Elle, Women's Health, Cosmopolitan, and Vogue, which is phenomenal. And it must have been a really cool experience. But I'm wondering what you think about the importance of seeing para-athletes or people in wheelchairs in the mainstream glossy magazines in increasing the visibility of people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is all visibility. I mean, growing up, I didn't really see anyone that looked like me in the media. I had Louise Savage, and there wasn't too many other people. And I think for a very long time, we've been doing, I guess, representation, which isn't quite tokenistic. It's important, it's very good. But if you have someone in a role and they're representative, you're not allowed to be authentic. If you have, a person with a disability in a shoot and they're representing people with disabilities, that still becomes their entire identity. Whereas I feel like we're moving on from representation towards visibility, which I think is what, Women's Health and Ellen Vogue and Cosmo and all those kind of magazines were doing, where it's just trying to present somebody in their entirety as authentic as possible, every single facet of them. So, the wheelchair, the disability was suddenly not the most interesting thing about me. I was happy and so lucky to be in all those magazines because of who I was and what I'd done outside of all that. And, just as a side piece was the fact that I was also in a chair while doing all those things. And so I think you get to see somebody represented in all the ways that they authentically exist. And, most of that was about, being an athlete. Some of it might have been about, things I've done like on the side, because of my sport. And then a very small part was about disability. And I love the idea of kids with disabilities seeing themselves not just summed up as a disability. I think when I'm, scrolling through social media or seeing something, if I see a person with a disability, before I read the caption or the article, there's a part of me that's like, I know this article is going to be about their disability, and 9 times out of 10 it is. And what we want to see is, you see an image of a person with a disability, and then the article is about something else they've done just by being a human, and it's not about that one small part of them that isn't that relevant. You want your disability to be the least interesting thing about you. And I think that's what, those magazines are doing. And that's the narrative that I'm trying to push, is just visibility of an entire human, and you kind of see all parts of it, and you kind of pick the parts that you relate to when you see people in the media. And yeah, I think we're moving in that direction, which is so exciting that I get to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess your role model status and your role in this conversation got taken to a whole nother level this year when you became Barbie's 2020 Shero and you got a Barbie modeled off you. Barbie's such an iconic brand and so idolized by so many young girls. How did you feel when you got told that you were going to be a Barbie? Were you expecting it?
No, I think that is still one of the most shocking conversations I've ever had in my life. It was not something that was anything that I would have ever in my wildest dreams expected to happen. And I think it must be the highest compliment I have ever been paid, considering just who we have in Australia, female athletes who are just incredible. So to be kind of even like put in the same space as them, let alone be chosen by Barbie to, to have this doll. But I think the more I learned about Barbie through working with them, the more I realized how much all their values just so closely aligned with mine. And so I think to be chosen not just as an athlete for what I've done, on the track and on the road, but for what I'm trying to do outside of that did align with their values, I think it was a huge compliment. And they're working so hard to close what they call the dream gap, which is basically just the idea that at such a young age, girls stop thinking that they can be anything they want. Whereas, boys, for the most part, will continue believing they can, have any occupation and do all this. And so Barbie's working so hard to try and close this dream gap and teach girls they can be whatever they want, whether it's in, Barbie has the most like jobs of any other toy or anything like that. So, it's cool to work with a brand that I really do align with.
Yeah, so as we were saying, Barbie is such an iconic brand, and it's amazing that they are showcasing different body types and abilities to the mainstream media. Do you think the creation of your Barbie will help develop the confidence of young girls who are so used to only seeing like the stereotypical body shape in the media and help normalize different body shapes?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely think so. You need to see everything. We live in the most beautifully diverse world, and yet we don't always get to see that. And I know this is such a cliche thing to say, but even, I feel like women who are in the media will come back and say, like, I don't even feel like I look like that. Like, none of us really relate to the image that is out there for women. And so, yeah, a brand like Barbie, with the enormous platform that they have, just showcasing diversity in such an authentic way, it is going to change. And it's not just going to change when a little boy or girl sees themselves represented. Their peers are going to see their friend represented, and that normalizes that experience as well, which is so important. It's not just for us to see ourselves, it's for our peers to see us as well. And brands like Barbie, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, totally. And you touched on it before, the issue of representation, versus visibility. And in your Mamma Mia piece that you wrote that I talked about earlier, you talk about the difference between those two things, in that the issue with representation is that it risks defining an entire community by one individual, one spokesperson. And you said in it, I'm a role model, not a poster child. And I guess you have sort of, you've come to be this sort of role model for the para-athletic community. But what do you mean by that quote? How can we challenge these sort of the current representation of people with disabilities or para-athletes?
We just need more voices in the conversation, to be honest. We need more voices being amplified. I want voices out there that from people with disabilities that agree with me and align with my values, and I want voices that completely disagree with me and have a whole new perspective to bring. And I don't think our voice for disability in Australia can just be athletes, which is what it kind of seems to be right now. They're the voices we want to listen to. If you think of iconic Australians with disabilities, like, I'm thinking of Inman and my coach Louise, I'm thinking of a few others, and we're all kind of in sport. And I want to see everyone elevated to that status, who's done the work and deserves it. You don't have to be in a weird niche job to kind of get that platform and that spotlight. And I think when we do get it, it is definitely our responsibility to grab onto that with both hands and do what we can with that platform. But I want to see that spread out. I want to see that spotlight on a much broader range of individuals from within our community. And yeah, I want different voices in that conversation. I want conflicting ones, because that's, the reality of it. And, then that's how I think you normalize anything, is with visibility. And I'm so happy that we're moving in that direction. But I think we just need to do it on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're also involved in mentoring children who want to get into wheelchair sports. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why it's important for these kids to have mentorship opportunities?
Yeah, we have a development group here in Sydney on Saturday mornings, and we have different ones all over the country in different states. And yeah, wheelchair racing it's such a technical sport. It's a weird sport to get into, so you definitely need like a lot of guidance getting through that. It's also, athletics is quite a lonely sport, so creating that kind of like team environment, amongst the kids and the younger athletes is really important. And my coach, Louise Savage, she does so much more work in that arena than I do. She is incredible. She volunteers so much of her time and resources and energy to, to get that group going. And, we're a small community in wheelchair racing. It's a small sport and it's a newer sport. And so, we're all on the same page, that we've all kind of banded together to just try and grow it. And, I think we'll all do whatever we can. And I know how the sport changed my life. And if, I can be involved in doing that for just one other person, then it's worth it. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you speak about Louise Savage a lot, as she's your coach at the moment, and she seems to be quite a mentor. I'm wondering, how important has her mentorship been for you, through, I guess, the nearly 10 years you've had competing professionally?
Yeah, she's been incredible, and the ways in which she's been incredible has kind of evolved over time, which has been, I think, while we've been working together successfully for over a decade now, I think we've both kind of evolved together in our relationship over those years. But I think that the biggest thing that she has done for me isn't kind of the coaching as such. She has such a different personality to me. She's, so fiery and ready to go all the time. And she's the most competitive person I've ever met to this day. And, I don't quite race like that. I don't have it in me to just want to beat the next person. That's not enough. I kind of need that, like just constantly being better than I was yesterday. And Lou and I didn't see eye to eye on that for a long time, because it's just our method is so different, and how we approach the exact same sport and the exact same events. But Lou was the person that kind of recognized how different we were as individuals, and kind of like we sat down and worked at what exactly my process had to look like, because she recognized that it couldn't look like hers, even though she had done it so successfully for years. And I feel like when we have success in something, so often we're like, well, this is the way to do it, and we kind of try and pass on that message. Whereas Lou never really did that. She worked out what works for me, and then molded this entire training program, the way I race and how we approach races around what I individually and personally need. And that's been amazing. And she's carried it through, I think, every part of her life. And it's something that, you know, I would love to try and do. And I try and apply it to, I guess, my own relationships, is just, yeah, helping somebody be really authentic and individual, even if it looks nothing like how you think it should.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting that you didn't get on at first, but obviously something's working there. I'm interested now that we're kind of in this, I guess, limbo at the moment. You're still being able to do a little bit of training, as you mentioned before. But what does the future look like for you, you know, in terms of sport and also all of your out of sport commitments that you're doing for, you know, role model, I guess, job that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I think I see the sporting career going for a little while longer. I haven't even thought about, you know, when I plan on stopping that. So right now, that's definitely the huge priority, and I'm basically just trying to, I guess, work everything in around that. I'm studying at the moment. I'm slowly getting my business degree, and I think that's mostly, I think, you know, for balance. I think sport is so consuming. It's nice to kind of step away and be forced to do something else for a little bit. But I think Australia has the potential to be the most incredible place to live as a woman, as a person with a disability, any minority. Basically, I think we just have a lot of work to do. And when I speak to individuals, we all want to make a change. We just don't really know how. And I would love to use sport to build the biggest possible platform that I can, and then use that platform to actually impact some kind of change that is more important than sport. I think, you know, I would love if we lived in a place where, you know, kids with disabilities growing up don't see themselves as other or less than, and just see themselves as genuine and valuable members of our community, which isn't how I think children with disabilities are growing up right now, where we're moving and we're changing. And I would just love to be involved in that change. I think there's so much we can work on and do and educate, and Australians want to. Everyone I speak to is like, just tell me what to do and we will do it, but no one knows what to do. It's such a, you know, it's not a topic we talk about enough, and we're all a bit uncomfortable about it. So yeah, changing that would be my big thing.
Cool. So, Maddie, obviously, like with the postponement of Tokyo, that must have been pretty frustrating for you and your trainings, or especially leading up to, like, your preparation leading up to it. How has that influenced your training, and like, are you still training at such a high, I guess not as much of a high intensity, but what is your training schedule like, with as you have recognized that the Olympics will be now next year instead of this year?
Yeah, so specifically, we've been doing still a lot of chair sessions still. So yeah, the race chair still 6-7 times a week. And it's the gym that's been the main one. So we've kind of switched from gym sessions to basically just band workouts and bodyweight things from home, just to try and maintain whatever shoulder health we kind of had. And that's been the biggest challenge. So we're normally around this time of year, we're kind of prepping to race on the track. So right now I'm meant to be in Switzerland racing. So this is when we're normally sharpening up, and we're not really able to do base work. And I think because we race so much throughout the year with the marathon circuit, our training blocks are quite interrupted. So right now we actually have this opportunity that we otherwise wouldn't have, to just kind of do so much base work. And then, you know, when everything kind of gets moving again and races, you know, start going, at least we've taken advantage of that time. So that's what we're doing right now, just kilometers in the race chair.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. We've really appreciated the conversation. It was really interesting to get your perspective on your journey and everything. So thank you so much, Maddie.
No, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to episode 6 of Beyond the Balls. Ella and I will be back in another 2 weeks to discuss all the topics on women's sport. You can find the show notes at wisports.com. Follow Maddie on Twitter and Instagram at Maddy Rozario and at Madison full stop with 4 underscores. You can find Wisports at Wisports on all socials, and you can find Women's Sport Australia at Oz Women's Sports on all socials, or if you prefer to email over social media, info@wisports.com.
Thanks for listening and supporting women in sport. We'll see you again in another 2 weeks.